Barnstable This Morning. Time to talk finance, and we're continuing discussions on the fiscal 2016 capital improvement plan. And I welcome live on the phone our Director of Finance, Mark Milne. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So preparing for the big capital budget presentation before Town Council Thursday night. Obviously, so important to effectively communicate this to our leaders and decision makers. So talk to me a little bit about that process, Mark.
Yeah, we prepare a separate capital budget every year, apart from the operating budget, for several reasons. I mean, we're talking about some very large expenditures here, and those types of expenditures require an extra level of scrutiny because you want to understand what the impact of future operating budgets may be, whether it's going to cost more money or we're going to save money, what the impact in future service levels may be, how it may affect the community's future growth. And these are expenditures that are very large in dollar amount, and as a result of that, by putting them into the operating budget, we could have large fluctuations in the operating budget from year to year. And so you want to prepare a separate capital budget and review these things with a different lens.
Indeed, and again, important, I think, for people to understand that. I always think about it as the capital budget is kind of the work that needs to get done, the physical work, the tangible stuff, and the operating budget is kind of everything else, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. This is the tangible stuff. These are the buildings, the roads, the sidewalks, the lakes, the beaches. I mean, these are things people actually use and see and can touch and feel, and they can see the improvements and appreciate. We hope where the dollars are being spent because they are so tangible.
Indeed. So I see that in the presentation that you're getting ready for the council on Thursday, you talk a little bit about the planning process as well, and I would think that that's important to kind of know how you got from point A to point B and drew all of the conclusions and said, yes, this is why I want to make these expenditures.
Yeah, it's a lengthy process. We start early in the fiscal year in August and asking departments to develop and submit their proposals. We have a task force that reviews all of those proposals against a 10 matrix evaluation criteria model that we use, and we also review various financing alternatives as part of that process. And then we meet with staff and review the task force evaluations, sit down with the department heads reviewing the financing alternatives, and to come up with what we think is the most pressing needs and projects that we can afford today. I mean, some of the projects are very important, but we don't have the money yet to implement them. So while they may be important, we may have to postpone them for another year or two until we fine-tune the financing mechanism for those plans.
Indeed. Talk to me a little bit about the rating system, Mark.
Yeah, we use a 10-point matrix that it looks at 10 different areas of how a project may impact the community. Things like how does it affect our public health and safety, our education system, our economic development, any relationships to existing plans that we may have, the impact on the operating budget, the quality of life to the community, and so forth. And based on whether or not it has a high impact or a no impact at all in that category, it can receive a score that ranges from 4 down to 0. And then all those scores are averaged, and it gives us a sense as to which projects score the highest against this matrix, and that gives us, adds a level of objectivity to the evaluation process. We think because we're specifically saying rate this project against these specific critical areas, and based on whoever gets the highest score, you tend to believe that that's some of the most important projects that we need to address.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then kind of moving on to looking at the summary, kind of laying out in a very simple way, all of the proposals that are there, 43 of them totaling about $27 million.
Yes, it's a pretty large capital program this year. Enterprise funds are about $12 million. General fund projects, 20 proposals for the general fund totaling about $15 million. Some of the largest ones we spoke about were improvements to various school facilities, almost $8.2 million of improvements to our school facilities. And those types of CIP items always score high because of the type of use. I mean, the facility is used almost every single day. It houses most of our employees and all of our children, and so they're very important assets to the community, and for that reason, they always score high.
Indeed. And then moving next, showing a couple of maps in the presentation. And why is it important to kind of show those maps and to kind of take a look at where the projects are being done?
Yeah, I thought we added this year. I thought this was an interesting portrayal of how broad this capital program proposal goes across the town. Every village is impacted in some manner with this capital improvement program plan, and the map illustrates where each one of these locations are going to be, as far as whether or not it's going to receive a road improvement, a sidewalk improvement, a guardrail improvement, addressing water quality issues in some of the ponds, and I think it's important to see we're such a large town geographically speaking, and as a result we have a very large capital program, and I think this map shows that in a picture format so that you can get a better understanding of how big our needs are and how broad this capital program proposal reaches, in a sense that it addresses so many different issues.
Indeed, and that the projects are spread out across town too. I think that's important for everyone to see. And then, of course, talking about financing, I think that's a key part of it. Where's the money coming from? How are we going to pay for all of this?
Sure, that's a good question. We have a number of reserves in all the enterprise funds as well as the general fund. We'll be using a portion of the reserves to fund some of the program, but the biggest funding source for the capital plan will be the issuance of general obligation bonds, and that's typically the major, on an annual basis. The majority of the funding comes from the issuances of general obligation bonds to finance these, and then we have to work those annual loan payments back into the annual operating budget in the subsequent years. So we take a long-term look at the budget when we make decisions like this, which is why it's important to do a separate capital plan, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, because you want to understand what the impact of that is. But we also have some significant grant money for the airport projects. As always, the airport receives a great deal of their capital financing from the state DOT, Department of Transportation, as well as the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. So fortunately, in a sense, from a finance perspective, that is they pay for majority of the capital improvements out at the airport, which relieves us of having to do that locally.
Exactly, that's always a good thing. And then, of course, kind of ending it with let's look forward and see what's coming down the pike. I think always good to have in the back of your mind, what's next, what are we going to look at in the future, in the coming 3, 5, 7, 10 years.
Yeah, we have a number of the departments submitted proposals for over 100 projects over the next 5 years that we need to address, but that doesn't necessarily include everything that we may be working on, because there's a number of other projects that are the scope is under development, and which will lead to cost development in, for things like the shooting range, Osterville Bay School property, the Marston's Mills Elementary School property, the Armory, our comprehensive wastewater management plan. These are all, we did not receive submissions specifically for these projects as part of the 5-year plan, because the scope of what we're going to do at these various locations has not been fully vetted. And then once we complete that process, we'll be able to develop some cost alternatives to address what we want to do at those sites. So we're always looking at that, and that leads to the fact that the CIP is really a year-round process. We are constantly evaluating issues that come up. And for things like the high school cafeteria walls this last fiscal year, for example, we noticed a failing wall structure out by the cafeteria wall. We had to address that immediately. That wasn't part of the capital plan last year, but we have a mechanism in place to address that, and we addressed almost a dozen different projects after the capital plan was approved. We had all these other issues that came up, whether a grant opportunity arose or a failing piece of infrastructure. we have to address those. So the capital planning is a year-round process.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, I thank you so much as always for joining us here on Barnstable This Morning, and good luck Thursday night, and we will talk with you again next Wednesday. Have a great day.
You too, Sarah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Mark Milne, of course, our Director of Finance, along with the Town Manager and the Assistant Town Manager, will be making that presentation about the CIP to Town Council tomorrow.